Happy Tuesday. We're catching up with The Irishman because they got a lot of de-aging to do. We've also got a brand new trailer for one of my most anticipated, The Curse of La Llorona, and then another trailer that might spark some controversy at this table. It's a trailer for a movie called Yesterday. Has a little something to do with the Beatles. Welcome back for a brand new episode of Collider Movie Talk. Look who's joining me today. We have John Rocha back on the table.
Hey.
And Jeff Sneider, who I don't know if he's ever going to forgive me for ambushing him mere seconds before the show started to get that laptop off this table.
Yeah.
I'm not happy.
I know.
And you know what? I wasn't happy to begin with.
That I know as well. We have a big lineup today, as we always do. 5 stories in total because we have a second half of the show that's basically a trailer roundup. And I know the guys I'm sitting with right now have a lot to say about those. But first up, we have the story about The Irishman. So The Irishman is obviously the highly anticipated upcoming movie from Martin Scorsese. And the thing with this one is it's based on a book that spans many years of the characters' lives. And of course, we have Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci in the movie. And for some of the movie, they will play themselves as they are today in their 70s. But apparently for half of the movie, they're going to use de-aging technology. And that's a significant amount of that production right there. Yahoo Movies UK was catching up with Scorsese's longtime editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, and here's what she told them about the status of everything. We're youthifying the actors in the first half of the movie, and then the second half of the movie, they play their own age, so that's a big risk. We're having that done by Industrial Light and Magic Island, ILM. That's a big risk. And then on top of that, she also had added, we're seeing some of it, but I haven't gotten a whole scene where they're young. And what I'm going to have to see, and what Marty's going to have to see is how is it affecting the rest of the movie when you see them young? So rumor has it that this movie is going to drop on Netflix later this year. So first off, Jeff, do you read these quotes and get a little concerned that she hasn't seen a complete scene of them young yet?
No, because, I mean, there is no release date yet. We've heard October, November, but I don't think Netflix has officially announced anything, and there's still a lot of time. She's one of the greatest editors in the history of the medium, so I imagine she could, turn this around pretty quickly.
The way that I'm reading this right now, based on her quotes, is that maybe she's already edited a significant portion, because the second half of this also says, interestingly, we've only been able to screen for very few people because they're wearing some things on their faces and on their clothes that tracks their movement. So I'm thinking maybe she does have some sort of assembly, and she's just specifically talking about not having seen a finished scene with them with their de-aging effects.
Right, because the visual effects aren't done. So the film's still in post, and until those effects are done, she won't really be able to complete her edit. So it sounds like they're just showing people a really rough cut right now.
Ooh, a lot of big money elements going around right here. So I guess my big question for you, Rocha, is how are you feeling about this right now? Is it going to be worth it in the end?
Well, Heat is what you look back to when you see this combination of De Niro and Pacino. But you throw in Scorsese into the mix. Remember Silence? Yeah, neither do I. And so you start to wonder, you put these people all together and the amount of money that's being spent. Remember Gangs of New York? I absolutely do not like that movie, but he spent a lot of money. Weinstein had to go out and borrow money to make this thing happen. It was a lot that went down with Gangs of New York, and that movie didn't do that well at the box office. So here comes Scorsese again, kind of going back into his youth with De Niro rather, and Pesci, and then bringing Pacino along for the ride and de-aging. We saw the de-aging in Ant-Man and the Wasp with Michelle Pfeiffer, with Michael Douglas. They still moved slowly like old people, but they facially looked younger, but you're still moving slower. So to me, it's like you could de-age them till they're 10 years old. They still have to physically move at that age. You have to buy that. You have to make it believable. And I don't know that necessarily this is the way to go. And do we need another Jimmy Hoffa story? Do we need this much money pumped into a Jimmy Hoffa story? I just don't see necessarily that people beyond curiosity will see this thing as a possible Oscar Best Picture film.
I think it's definitely going to be an awards contender if it.
You think so?
Yeah.
If it's good. Do you think it's going to be good?
If it's good, we're talking about Scorsese and De Niro and Pacino. What would make us think it's not going to be good?
I can show you their filmographies if you want.
Not when they're all working together.
No, well.
It's a fair point. It's just thinking about everything that went into it and thinking about the risk. I mean, because we're also talking about half the film using that technology. And I know the technology is at a certain level at this point that it is pretty good there. But when you're talking about such a large amount of it and having so much time to be able to maybe isolate certain things like what you were bringing up, Rocha, like the way their body movements are. And, sometimes you have where, like, depending on what kind of facial technology they're using, where, like, the eyes come across as dead or just something isn't lined up correctly. I'm just hoping that all of this time and effort is going into a film that has this technology working at peak possible levels.
There's no doubt that this movie is expensive and perhaps overly expensive. Like, this is a gigantic investment for Netflix and one that they're never going to be able to recoup because even if the film gets a theatrical release, which it is expected to, it's not going to be on 3,500 screens. It's going to be a platform release like Roma, a small release. I think that this is more about driving a different kind of viewer to the service. I mean, Netflix has all these young eyeballs, but what about these men and women who grew up watching De Niro and Pacino and would love to recapture some of that youth by watching the de-aged versions of the biggest stars of the 70s. So I think, if my dad didn't already have Netflix, if he didn't watch Narcos, if I hadn't gotten him a subscription, this is the kind of thing that might entice someone of my dad's age to sign up for Netflix.
Well, it does seem like a smart move when you put it that way too, because when you think about all the other streaming services that are constantly being talked about right now or that are on the rise, it's like obviously my mind is going to Disney Plus. We of course have the DC streaming service. We have CBS All Access with Star Trek. They're all focused on big brands, big blockbuster brands and superhero brands. So if Netflix continues, and it's not just with material like this, but you consider what they're doing across the board with comedies like To All the Boys I Loved Before, with their horror properties, they're basically amassing fans in every single genre. And who knows? I know, let's say Disney has the deepest pockets in the world, but down the line, having a gigantic library filled with so much variety could be the sink or swim element of this whole thing.
Yeah, and this is obviously to keep maintaining the prestige status as a possible. I mean, we'll see what happens with Roma, but certainly Beasts of No Nation was that first shot across the bow. Now you have something like Roma, which might win, might not win. You both at FYC, you probably know better than I do. But you look at this. Does The Irishman really fall into that kind of feeling? Because to me, it seems like a bunch of useless money. You could have just cast people that look like Pacino, look like De Niro, go back in time, be young. They're way back in the 30s. I can't believe
you're taking this stance, Rocha. Cast someone who looks like Pacino, De Niro. There's only one. There's only one each. They're the greatest actors ever.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know if they're the greatest actors ever. They're certainly in the conversation. Look, I'll throw Brando out there, smack you in the face with it. But this is the deal. When you look at this, you go, I'm just saying people would have suspended their disbelief and gone back in time with them, because if you focus most of the movie on them being older, which is if you look at the quotes, it's supposed to be a reflective film, which is based in an older time. A time when they're older, the characters are older, and looking back on scenes and how it affects what they're doing currently in the present of the movie. So to me, that's why you can have these things where you go back in time, see the younger versions of yourself, blah, blah. That guy that got cast as a younger version of Harrison Ford in Age of Adeline, that was pretty believable. So you're like, okay, can you make it work? Can you find someone who looks like Pacino, De Niro, and Pesci? I'm certain you could.
Are you worried about it being a distraction? Is that what the concern is?
Yes, yeah. Mike, like I did.
It'll take you out of the movie.
It's not going to be the same as General Moff Tarkin, but certainly with Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer, and to a lesser extent Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War, you get these younger versions of themselves. But are you going to be caught up in trying to figure out how it works and caught up with how well it looks, rather than focusing on the story, the script, the words being said, the scenes?
That's fair. That's totally fair. When I saw Jeff Bridges in Tron, it took me out of it, and I'm like, you're just focused on, wow, that's so cool. How do they do that? And you're not focused on the story or what the character is actually trying to achieve.
And even the examples you bring up, it's a small fraction of the amount of screen time than what we're talking about right here. I'm actually curious to see what happens when we get Captain Marvel, because there's going to be a significant amount of Samuel L. Jackson de-aged in that movie. And I feel like, I don't know if they're using precisely the same technology, but if it works really well in that to the point that I'm not taken out of the movie because I'm wowed by how young he looks, then I think I would be a little more encouraged here. But I think what it comes down to with The Irishman is I need to see a trailer. I need to see this world come together, and I need to see what you said, how they move around in it.
Yeah.
All right. Now we are moving on to story number 2, and this is a little bit of a continuation of something we covered yesterday. So yesterday we were busy talking about an Aquaman spin-off movie, The Trench, and today we get word that Warner Brothers has hired a writer to pen Aquaman 2, a proper Aquaman sequel. The writer that's returning from the first film is one of the co-writers on the first film, David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, and he's coming back. He's coming back to pen this script. So, Rocha, how are you feeling about this? One, is it best for the film if he returns? And two, I mean, coming off hot off of our conversation from yesterday, what are you more excited about now?
Well, for me, I think it's a smart move overall for DC and Warner Brothers. You keep the continuity. Look, thing made $1 billion. Why wouldn't you bring back one of the writers? This is akin to what happened with Venom, right? Venom made surprisingly this much money. They're going to do a sequel. I think Kelly Marcel is the writer they're bringing back to be in charge. So I don't know what job necessarily David, will he be in charge of the whole writers? Will there be other writers involved? I don't know. But to me, this seems logical on so many levels. Like I said, because the movie made $1 billion, you want to keep the continuity there. I wonder, though, this is interesting to come out on the heels of The Trench. Did they feel like, well, we need to get ahead of this a little bit more because this Trench thing dropped and we need to let people know like that Aquaman 2 is in motion. We are going to do it. Like, are the WB or DC fans going to be upset that we're not focusing on an Aquaman sequel and instead focusing on this like kind of smaller horror tinge type of spin-off movie? So it was a 1-2 punch, and it makes sense to go this route.
Yeah, that's one thing that's always confounded me is that fans think that when news is reported, like it's reported in real time.
Yeah,
the studio was focused on The Trench, and then they got those writers, and then they focused on getting the writer back for Aquaman 2. This is just when reporters find stuff out. That's all it is. So I'm sure David Leslie Johnson has been in discussions to come back and write the sequel. I think it's kind of just a common courtesy in Hollywood. If someone is going to make you money, and particularly that much money, and there wasn't any issue with the relationship between him and the studio or with James Wan or whatever, of course you bring him back. You give him a first crack to repeat his success and capture that lightning in a bottle again. That said, since we know the nature of big budget tentpole Hollywood filmmaking, there's almost certainly going to be another writer on this project, and he will eventually be rewritten. But for now, you get first crack at the first draft.
So do you also think that maybe this was a done deal before we're hearing about it today, where he's been, thinking about the concept for Aquaman 2 well before? I
think as soon as Aquaman opened to the numbers that it did in mid-December and then continued to rule the box office the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'm sure they were like, yeah, they're thinking sequel, and they're talking to him. I don't know who else they would try to engage before him,
So then how do you interpret them adding this to his already large list of upcoming projects? Because the other things are The Conjuring 3, another Nightmare on Elm Street movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Dungeons and Dragons, which he's working on with a couple of other writers. So looking at that list, I mean, some of these do seem like a high priority to me, where the studios would want to get them off the ground sooner rather than later. So where does Aquaman 2 fit in, and could we see The Trench first?
It's a good question. I don't know what, because the article that we were basing on, none of these have release dates. So this is an ever-shifting type of situation for David. I think it all depends on when the studios want him, because he's got his relationships, things he has to write, has been assigned, and so he's got these requirements on himself. I think it speaks volumes that so many studios trust him with these kinds of properties or franchises and movies to create whole new installments in them, and I think that's fantastic. I think WB definitely wants Aquaman 2 out before The Trench. I think that would be a smart move. To drop The Trench before Aquaman 2 seems a bit weird to me, even on the heels of this new approach to dropping their films. It would seem a bit weird. Trench probably quicker to make, but I think Aquaman 2 is the one they want to kind of keep going here, because Wonder Woman 2 went into production almost immediately, or at least 3 months after the first one came out and was so great. So
The Trench is one of these development titles that we'll be lucky I use lucky and very loose quotation marks, will be lucky to ever see.
What? Why?
Because, I mean, James Wan has always loved that universe thing and the spin-offs, and it does very well for The Conjuring. I don't know how it would work as far as DC goes. DC's timeline is super weird. You would think that they would prioritize Aquaman 2, but, like, you know, they didn't do that with Man of Steel 2.
Nope, they didn't.
So it's hard to tell. I imagine that a sequel to a $1 billion movie would be the guy's top priority. He's probably already done with Dungeons and Dragons. He's probably already written Body Snatchers, but there's no way that those development projects, which have been kicking around Warner Brothers for ages, that those would leapfrog Aquaman 2 for any reason.
But you think Aquaman 2 before The Trench?
Absolutely. I think they would be insane to do a spin-off before a proper sequel. I just don't know what The Trench is. It just sounds like a concept that where James Wan has made money. Like, I don't think The Trench would be a big budget movie.
No. I think that's how they pitched it. Is they're saying horror tinge and also a smaller budget, which, when you're talking about how much money an Aquaman 2 would cost and how long of a production process that would be, that's why I'm thinking maybe The Trench would be a good one to launch first, especially because, you know, we know based on the report that was given out yesterday, or at least we think we know right now, that the main characters from Aquaman likely will not be in The Trench, but they can be used in a small capacity just as a little bit of connective tissue to remind you, Aquaman is still here, get ready for the sequel.
Right, all you need is a cameo, really, from Momoa.
I think that would wind up benefiting them, and it would also keep Aquaman in the conversation regardless of how long it takes them to actually put the second one together. No?
No, I think
Not sold?
I think that absolutely makes a lot of sense, Perry. I do. Certainly that's an avenue they can explore. And if you look at The Joker, you look at Birds of Prey, two of these films that are a bit out of the norm of how DC has been rolling out these larger spectacle films, then you see that they have an interest in going this route and exploring that possibility with The Trench. Who knows if it'll happen before Aquaman 2, but I would be surprised, but by the same token, I've seen DC do some strange things recently, so then again, I might not be that surprised.
Well, hopefully we get a couple more concrete updates on these stories soon. Right now, I have to remind you about some super cool programming we had launched today on the Collider Network. First, I think we had a little fake news on Collider Quick from the one and only Josh McCouga. And then on top of that, there was a brand new Rule of Two. So go check those out. Also, I'm going to remind you right now, send in those live Twitter questions because we're going to answer them right here on the show. Use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. All right. I have to brace myself for this. It's trailer time, and I'm already semi-aware of the large divide that's going to happen on this desk right now. The first one we are talking about is Tolkien from Fox Searchlight. It's their upcoming biopic of the late fantasy author, and theonering.net had the trailer, and of course it tells the life of j.r.r. Tolkien. The story is going to explore his relationships while at school, spending time in his formative years as an author and artist before the horrors of World War I change him and his friends forever. Keep an eye out for this movie. It is hitting theaters May 10th. Oh no. I don't know who to go. All right, Jeff, let's get it out of the way. Were you not into this?
What's the point of a 55-second teaser and it's just like these, you're seeing glimpses into his imagination. There are these horses, you don't know who's on the horses, you don't know who's battling, you don't even know what the hell you're watching really until they use the word fellowship. Yep. It's a story about courage and fellowship, and they just forgot to say it's about towers and the return of a king too. Like, I'm telling you, this feels like a movie that started with someone just being like, imagine this gold ring flying at you at the screen, and then it turns into the O in Tolkien. Nicholas Hoult as j.r.r. Tolkien does nothing for me. I don't think he's that great an actor. I don't think Lily Collins is that great an actress in support.
What?
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, this movie does nothing for me.
Oh, I'm surprised. I was also surprised how strongly I reacted to this because I admire the Lord of the Rings movies, but that's never been my fandom. That's never been something that I've been super excited about. And then I saw this, and I did kind of appreciate the way they wove his real-life experience into just the creative elements that perhaps sparked the stories that we know so well today. And I don't know. I thought it was kind of charming and clever and rousing, and it did work for me. And I do really like Nicholas Hoult. I think that part of the problem with Nicholas Holt's career is he could easily headline just about any movie out there. It's just a matter of having picked up a few poor projects along the way. It's like there's a number of them where what was the movie where he plays a record executive. I feel like you would love this movie.
I saw it.
What is it called?
Kill Your Friends.
He was so good in Kill Your Friends, and nobody saw that movie. So, it's just a matter of him picking the right projects, and I feel like we're all going to really see and appreciate what Nicholas Hoult is capable of.
He's much better in support. He's good in The Favorite. He's good in Mad Max.
He's so good in The Favorite.
But for me, he's not a lead. He can't carry a movie at all.
All right. Do you agree, Rocha? Is Nick Hoult a lead, and is this a good trailer?
I liked this trailer a lot. I thought it gave the right scope of what you're going to get when you get a full trailer. It's 55 seconds long. It didn't have that Christopher Robin vibe to it. Didn't have that other Goodbye Christopher Robin vibe to it either. It had something else that I really enjoyed, which was a darkness to it, a reality to it, and connecting his experiences in World War I with what influences him when he starts to write these things and what they're connected to. So in that way, I love the shot of him lying down, and then it changes into the shot of him lying in the trenches in World War I. So we see the influences and those two horses coming at each other with the darkness in the background. Yes, is it a bit fantastical? Sure, but writers are writers, and writers see the world in a way different way than regular people do. And so this feels like it's going to have that kind of magic biopic thing to it, and it may come out being a little better than people expect. And yes, Nicholas Hoult is a lead. You just have to find the right projects for him. I also think he's a bit of a baby face, so it's a little harder to find the right projects for him. If he was a little more grizzled or lived in of a stronger face, I think you'd find right things for him. But he's a bit soft, and being a bit soft, it's tough to find the right project for him. But I look forward to him as j.r.r.
Or doesn't that mean he'll just have younger roles at his disposal for far longer than anybody else?
Sure,
I never realized having a baby face was a disadvantage.
Well,
there's only one thing that matters on this entire teaser, okay? And that's the date at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's
May
fair. That's
10th.
fair.
Because if this movie was any good at all, it would be premiering at the Toronto Film Festival, and then it would come out in the fall, where all prestige biopics come out. I think that they're putting it in the spring because they know that its commercial prospects are not very good, and its awards prospects are probably not very good, and et cetera, et cetera.
I can't lie, that crossed my mind.
There was a World War II film that came out about Dunkirk last year and a half ago or whatever. And
Dunkirk.
No, it didn't get a lot of publicity or press, and it was a fantastic British film about the war.
This is so helpful without knowing the title.
It was right around the time it was right on the time of the spring, and yet it was a really well done British film. It just didn't capture the award stuff, but doesn't mean it wasn't a well done British film. There is possibilities here that this could be a well done British film. They don't all have to come out and get Oscars. Sometimes they can just be good films that are good films to watch. I wish I could remember it. Damn it.
You're going to remember it as soon as we wrap today. I can promise you that. All right. That is where we stand on that trailer. Now it's time for another one. And I, for one, am super pumped about this. We're talking about the new trailer for The Curse of La Llorona. It's a new one from New Line Cinema. Tale of La Llorona tells of a young woman who drowned her children in a fit of jealousy, only to commit suicide when she realized what she had done. Now her spirit haunts the earth, sobbing and cursed to search for her children in the afterlife for all eternity, and if she can't find hers, she might take yours. So this movie here is set in the 1970s, and it stars Linda Cardellini as a social worker who basically finds herself trapped in La Llorona's nightmare. Movie comes out April 19th. Rocha, New Line is hitting it super, super big with horror movies for years now. Sí. Is this the next in that line of box office successes?
Yo creo que sí, porque me ha asustado esta película. Mucho horror, mucho. Me gusta la Linda Cardellini que está en esta película. Me asusta harto. So I liked it a lot. I thought it was really well done. It was scary. I like it. I've been kind of quietly championing this film for two reasons. One, it's a Latino director. Two, Linda Cardellini, who does not get enough opportunities to lead, and she's a fantastic actress. She is not just Hawkeye's wife, people. Do your research, freaks and geeks. Was it Bloodline or whatever the one's on Netflix? Bloodline. She's incredible in that film, in that show. And so she's done fantastic work all across the board for years. Having her, giving her a chance to lead a horror film is great. Vera Farmiga is another one that only quietly does leads in independent films, rarely gets a shot to be a lead in other films. She did a great job in The Conjuring. So you have these possibilities here with these actresses. You want to put an anchor down. She's a good anchor. I like this trailer. Her scream when she looks in the mirror was fantastic. And shout out to Raymond Cruz and all those Latino actors we've seen in multiple films getting a shot to do something in this. And let me tell you something. As a Latino, horror is our upbringing. Your parents scare the crap out of you growing up with all these tales of demons and goblins and stuff that are around the corner if you do anything wrong in the world. So that is certainly part of our cultural, and of course Catholicism, Christianity, and the devil and God are very big as well. So this is all mixed in.
I totally grew up in the wrong country. I feel like every culture has such rich, like, horrific legends, and I never had any growing up. Before I let you jump in, I want to sing this trailer's praises because I am super into this. I had no clue what this movie was when I first covered it at San Diego Comic-Con last summer, and one of the scenes that they showed us was the scene that bookends this with the girl in the bathtub and La Llorona's hands. And seeing that full scene cut together, it was creepy. It had a unique touch on it. It was something I hadn't quite seen before. I'm very into the whole feel here. And some of the stuff that worked best for me in this trailer was not even necessarily when we got to see La Llorona, but when certain things were moving and people were being thrown around at forces that you can't see. I find that especially scary. But, maybe not, it might not be the score we're going to see in the full feature, but I thought the score was very well done in this trailer. The stingers were right on point. And I'm hyped. I'm hyped for Michael Chaves. I want this to be great, and I want to be super pumped about The Conjuring 3. Jeff, are you going to bring the mood down?
Yes.
I knew it.
That's my job.
I knew it.
Listen, I don't go see these movies. I don't go see anything in the Conjuring universe. I didn't see The Nun. I didn't see, what was the other spin-off? Aren't they doing another spin-off?
Annabelle.
Yeah, I don't see any of the Annabelle movies.
You should see the second Annabelle.
Yeah, and everyone tells me I should see Ouija 2 as well. Here's the thing.
I don't.
All these movies look exactly the same.
Oh.
They are it's a carbon copy of one another over and over. The same beats, the same jump scares. You've never seen anything like a girl in a bathtub. I've seen that 8 zillion times. I like that this has the Hispanic influence, obviously. I think that this movie is going to be a hit. The Hispanic audience is growing. The Nun was a way bigger hit than I ever would have thought. So you can't fault New Line for churning out these movies or James Wan for just like being this horror factory, because it is very profitable. And I'm sure that they kept costs down since, Linda Cardellini is basically the only recognizable actor. Raymond Cruz, a solid Latino character actor, but he's the number 2 on this call sheet. That's not enough star power to get me in the theater. This feels like something that should debut on Shudder, and I'm not seeing this for sure.
Just to respond to the bathtub comment, yes, we have seen scenes like that in other movies, but this is one of those moments where you think it's going to be like what you had seen before, and when you see the full execution of that entire sequence, it caught me by surprise. So don't write that one off yet if that's what you're thinking.
This is the kind of movie that if you guys come in and say, and you went to a screening, you said it was great, and I skipped the screening, I didn't even RSVP for it, I would go buy a ticket and see it opening weekend.
Do you think she's going down into the Mary Poppins world in the bathtub?
Maybe she should, because the Mary Poppins world was terrifying.
Well, this one is actually debuting at South by Southwest, and this is going to be a freaking huge South by for horror. We have Us, La Llorona, and also Pet Sematary, and I believe all of them are coming out pretty close together. So the bunch, what's the winner?
Well, that's Us. And then Pet Sematary, and then La Llorona. I was going to ask you, because I think it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. If you could only have 2 tickets for those 3 films, which
that's not
which
nice.
2 tickets are you getting?
Fair. I think that's absolutely
You're going
fair.
back to Mark Ellis's game, and it's not fair.
No, I think so.
Oh no.
What would be yours, John? We'll let her think it over.
Certainly Us and La Llorona, because to me, Pet Sematary, I'm a little nervous about. So I'd rather see if La Llorona captures the Hispanic audience approach to.
Okay, so La Llorona is my odd man out. Pet Sematary is John's odd man out.
You're
Perri?
making me feel so
Well, you think because you're the
bad.
host, you don't have to weigh in with an opinion anymore?
I wish. I would like to make that a rule, but I would take out La Llorona.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
it's because Us looks so phenomenal,
Well, sure.
and also
'Cause it looks original.
I'm also attached to the source material from Pet Sematary, so it has that kind of edge. But as far as box office draw goes, I do think Us and Pet Sematary are going to be big, and maybe I do think La Llorona is going to pop as well. I think all
It
three
is.
are going to wind up being huge financial successes, but
Yes.
where we're going to see La Llorona potentially overtake the other two is worldwide.
Yeah.
And really, the end goal there is to make the most amount you can worldwide. So if that's how this one wins out, good for it. All right, we have one more trailer to hit today.
Oh,
Yet
boy.
another one that's going to spark some controversy. So Universal released the trailer for Danny Boyle's new movie yesterday. This one is written by Richard Curtis, and the film follows Jack Mallik, a struggling singer-songwriter who, after a bus accident during global blackout, awakens in a world where he's the only person who remembers the songs of the Beatles. This one opens up on June 28th, and it also stars Lily James. I don't even know who to go to first.
I'll take it. Let me tell you
Fine.
something, guys. This trailer is stupid.
You're heartless.
This is a stupid. How could Richard Curtis come up with this idea for a movie?
Now wait a second.
What?
Wait a second. Richard Curtis comes up with these ideas all the time. Don't compare him to Shakespeare, for God's sake. This is his wheelhouse.
I'm just like, Danny Boyle, weren't you supposed to do a James Bond movie and then the schedule ran out because you had to get in this musical? What is this movie? John, please help me out here.
Look, first of all, the movie I was trying to think about is Their Finest, that stars Gemma Arterton and Bill Nighy and Sam Claflin. Go see it. Second of all, here's what I'll say. I am a Richard Curtis sucker. Like, you put him in. About Time was great. I love Love Actually. Like, there's a lot of films he's done that I've thoroughly enjoyed from that side of the pond, being an Anglophile myself. That being said, this bothered me from top to bottom, and I wanted to love it because it's Danny Boyle. It's certainly well directed from the trailer. The problem is the guy can't sing. Second of all, I didn't. I mean, like using the Beatles music, I get it, but you show in the trailer he gets hit by a car and hits his head. So this is probably all a dream and a fantasy in his head to work out his relationship with Lily James. So it's that whole. So to me, I'm like, oh, okay, it's that. Then you bring in all these people to be a part of it, and Kate McKinnon.
Kate McKinnon.
Was completely miscast.
What?
I wanted to fall in love with this, and I did not, and it just did not work for me. And the guy seems like a good actor. I just thought he was terrible.
I love
He
that they
was not a good
mentioned.
singer. It was
I love that they
karaoke.
mentioned Coldplay in this trailer, as
yeah.
if Coldplay would exist.
I love when
if there had
Coldplay-
never been the Beatles.
How is Coldplay a punchline? Like, there's way worse bands.
That's what they are
than
now.
Coldplay and Chris Martin. Chris Martin writes fantastic lyrics. You may like his music. His lyrics are good. He's not a punchline, for God's
I just like this. It caught me by surprise because I didn't know that that's what this movie was about.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I didn't know that this was that the movie was about this, because they've kept it under wraps on purpose. That's why they were so vague for the last 8 or 9 months while they were casting and then shooting this movie about what it was actually about. Because if I had known it was going to be about a kid who bumps his head and then for like the Beatles don't exist, I would have called it out way back then.
You guys are such grouches.
Are you going to pay to see this movie?
I will 100% pay to see this movie. I thought this was so charming. I thought it was cute and clever. I don't know what you're talking about him not being able to sing, but I obviously love the Beatles and the original recordings, but I'm also a huge sucker for Beatles cover songs, and the fact that so many were mashed up in this one trailer, and yes, maybe that is the goal of this kind of marketing effort, to sucker me in and see it. I don't know the quality of the movie in the end, but I was totally sold by this thing. I thought he was great in it. I liked Lily James. I like Lily James in everything she's in. So whenever she signs up for something, I'm usually encouraged. And you guys know I'm an Across the Universe fan. Like I'm
So
always,
is he apparently.
I'm
I
always
like it.
going to fall for something like this, and it's not just the whole Beatles shtick. Even it's like I want to see where it goes with the idea of him not being able to reconcile the fact that like he gets this fame by copying someone else's music
Yes,
because you know that it's going to hit that point eventually where he has to figure that out, and that to me is what's
and
drawing
that's what
me
Matt
in.
Goldberg was saying, that like, you know, he has to keep his own personal expression under wraps because other people's hit songs are what's working for him. To me, and this is my final note on this trailer, is just that this is like the polar opposite of what I want to see from Danny Boyle, who was so good making Shallow Grave and Train Spotting and 28 Days Later, these gritty, you know, edgy movies. This looks like cookie cutter fluff from the studio that brought you Mamma Mia 2.
And it's weird that you're right, Jeff, when you bring up the James Bond thing. That is a little weird. It's like, I can't shoot it now. I got to shoot this Beatles-tinged thing. It's really important for me to get this out there. And Perri, you bring up what he's going to be confronted by. We do see an allusion to possibly Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr showing up to call him out on it, because they said there's two men who claim that they've written the songs. Is it a John Lennon imitation with Paul McCartney, or is it something else? Who knows? But there's certain... But the thing is, here's the deal about singing. You got to interpret the song. There is nothing he's doing in this trailer that makes you feel what those songs feel like when you hear them, when John or Paul sings them, or George, or even Ringo. And I was frustrated by that, except the one moment I will say I liked was that Something moment when he was on the couch with, is it James Corden, is they singing to the actress, whatever that is. And of course
Ana de
now...
Armas.
Huh?
Ana de Armas
Is
from
that
Blade Runner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize her there. Yeah, Ana de Armas there. Like, I seen that. That was a nice moment in the trailer. Overall, though, I get what the trailer's trying to do. That just bothered me.
Yesterday, I mean, how could the Beatles have allowed this to happen?
You guys, I can't wait until this movie comes out and you're so pleasantly surprised and
Sure.
it just like melts
I
your
hope
heart.
it does.
I would love that.
I hope it does. But based on
Between
this bit of marketing, can't do
Between
it.
this and Blinded by the Light, I just have a good feeling that 2019 is going to be filled with so much music-inspired love.
Elton John too.
Embrace
Rocket
it.
Man?
And
Yeah,
yes,
Rocket
Rocket
Man.
Man as
Yeah.
well.
He wrote a
I
new
can't
song
wait
for
for
it,
that
I'm
one.
told.
Yeah.
All right.
I want that one bad.
A lot to look forward to. I'm telling you. Believe, guys. Come on. Tomorrow on Collider, we have so much new content coming your way. Of course, there is Collider Live, and then also Movie Talk coming back at you, 4 p.m. PT as always. And Rocha,
Yeah.
might be a little Heroes tomorrow?
Yeah.
Anything you can tease?
Sure, I can tease. Jay Baruchel is scheduled to come on to be interviewed by us on Collider Heroes. We've got Mike Kalinowski joining us to be part of Heroes as well, along with Coy Jandreau and Amy Dallin, talking all the latest from the world of heroes and villains.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. It is that time of the show when we take your live Twitter questions. And here's one kind of for you, Jeff, or I think you'll be able to speak to this maybe. I apologize for the mispronunciation here, but this one comes from Satyendra N. Banerjee. And he wants to know, what's the status of the Willy Wonka prequel?
Ooh.
I will never forget that was one of the first scoops you broke when you joined the team.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, I haven't heard one single solitary thing about it since that day.
Really?
I will say, so Paul King supposedly fell off of Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Remember, he was going to do that with Tom Hanks. So I wonder, you know, they said that it was because of a family issue that he had to deal with. I don't know if Pinocchio was going to be before Willy Wonka or not. I don't know what's happening with Willy Wonka. I hope Paul King's still on it. I like that short list that I saw with Gosling, Ezra Miller, and Donald Glover. You know, they all seemingly have relatively open schedules, except for maybe Ezra Miller. He may be the busiest out of all of them right now. So, yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
That's
Wish
a bummer.
I could help.
Yeah, I like that short list too. It just it spoke to so many different possibilities, and it had piqued my interest. All right, next Twitter question is from Sterling Jones, who asks, if you were given the choice to take over a film franchise, which would it be? For me, it would be Aliens. I would also bring Predator in down the line.
Take over a film franchise. Yeah.
Pressure's on.
Star Trek. If you gave me Star Trek to reboot as movies now after what happened with Star Trek Beyond, which I was not a fan of, or Into Darkness, which really split the fandom, I would start all over again and be in charge of that thing because I love it so much. Star Wars is the easy answer, obviously, and that depends on how you feel about these new batch. But I think Star Trek would be fun to be in charge of, and then the Fast and the Furious movies after that.
I think I know what franchise you would take over, Perri.
Do you? I think I know what you're going for, but I'm actually going to choose something different.
right.
Actually, you might know.
Well, then I would love to take over the Scream franchise.
Okay, I actually wasn't going there.
I think that Scream, could use a reinvention. I know Kevin Williamson is working on it now, but there was this series that I read growing up called The Babysitter by R.L. Stein. It was like 3 or 4 different books, and by the end of I think it was the 3rd book, that the protagonist, the babysitter, she becomes the killer ultimately because of all this years of being stalked and this trauma sort of sent her over the edge. And I would love to see Sydney sort of succumb to that and become the killer herself. Short of them handing me the Scream franchise, I'd like to reinvent Home Alone.
Oh,
that's
actually kind of fun. That should be. They kind of spiraled out of control with all their sequels, straight to DVD nonsense. But I think you could bring that back, especially
make it more modern.
Yeah, exactly. With all the new technology, I was actually going to go for Final Destination just because. I don't know what this says about me, but I walk around day and night thinking about possible
all
kills.
the things that can kill you.
If you only knew the narrative I spun at Sundance for a Sundance style Final Destination.
Oh my God.
Problems. Yeah, I'm not going to share any of that
icicles everywhere
right now.
you walk at Sundance. They could all just fall at any moment.
That's part of where this started, but I have other ideas. All right, here is a very difficult one from Luis E. de la Pena, and he wants to know, just like Aquaman, which animals would you like to have the ability to talk to?
Jeff, because he's a freaking animal. I would love to be able to talk to lions. That's what I would say.
You're talking to one right now, big guy.
Yeah, not really, not old lions. I'd like to talk to horses as well as the outlaw. That would really help. So I would say the horses and lions.
We're gonna buy you Mr. Ed's bones for your birthday. I'll go monkeys.
I bet you would.
Are you going to explain that?
Because my baby girl's a monkey.
Oh,
boy, I did not see that coming.
Right.
That's her nickname. Hi, monkey.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God, that was the sweetest thing that you ever did on a show.
She did better at karaoke than that guy on yesterday. That's for damn sure. She's
Check my
better.
Instagram.
Hi, I would just want to talk to Dewey because Dewey's really sad. Dewey's really sad right now because he's wearing a cone, and I feel bad that I can't talk to him and understand how to make him feel better.
I would bet $5 million that every pet owner would be surprised at the conversations they would have with their own pet.
Right.
And it might not be as pleasant as you think.
Be like, Perry, close the door when you use the bathroom. Jeez.
I'm taking a dump.
Taking it just one step too far.
No, I told you the one time that I was sure Dewey was speaking to me. He's in the bed, and you could see the bathroom from the bed, and I might have been drinking too much one night, and I might have been kind of sick, and he was looking at me, and I swear to God, what he must have been thinking was, why isn't she doing it on the floor?
I thought he was thinking, I'm not mad, Perry. I'm just disappointed.
Well, it could have been that too. All right, next question here is from J. Scott St. Clair, who asks, would you want to see Linklater complete, I think, a Dazed and Confused trilogy with a spiritual successor to Everybody Wants Some with a young professional in the early 90s? That's interesting. I wouldn't mind a 90s movie.
Yes to this 100%. This will be my only positive note of the show. This is a good idea. This is a movie I would pay to see. Dazed and Confused, one of my favorite films. I loved Everybody Wants Some. So if Linklater wanted to sort of explore the 90s again, I think that would be a great thing.
I'm into it. You don't look as convinced.
Yeah, I'm not in this camp. I like Richard Linklater. You know, I interviewed him a couple of years ago for Flag of Our Father. No, wait, what's it? Last Flag Flying?
Yes.
Which was a great, I enjoyed that movie a lot, but his Dazed and Confused is okay, and Everybody Wants Some was all right. It just isn't my bag. Yeah, so I wouldn't, I'm not in the wet, hot American summer camp either, so that kind of humor just doesn't do it for me. So, sure, he could fill it, of course. I think he's a fantastic filmmaker. He should certainly finish it out, but I probably wouldn't go see it.
Wow, Dazed and Confused is just okay in your book?
Yeah, man,
No.
I've seen it once,
All right.
maybe twice.
That's a classic
I
for me. I
understand
grew
not
up
liking
watching
Wet
and
Hot.
rewatching.
Yeah, I was watching the one with the spanking people. and
Everybody Wants Them is great too, and that one I feel like that
really
one's
is.
so underseen and underrated.
It is underseen.
The
that's for
last
sure.
third kind of peters out when it becomes more about the romance with Zoe Deutsch, but all those guys are hilarious.
They're great.
I'd go watch the movie tonight after work.
Yeah.
Didn't he do the Before trilogy?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you put that above those two?
I've actually never seen a film in that trilogy, so I can't really speak to it.
I put Dazed and Confused and Everybody Wants Him above that, but I think it just speaks to my taste more than anything.
Whereas I enjoyed those movies way more than Dazed or Everybody Wants Him. I like the conversation.
All right,
Tron's a lover, not a fighter.
We're going to squeeze in one more Twitter question
Squeeze
today. Jeff, I'm giving you a pass on this if you want it. This one comes from Edwin Victorine, who asks that the first few MCU phases were connected and focused heavily on the Infinity Stones and Thanos' arrival. Aside from being in the same universe and a potential secret invasion, what connective threads do you think Phase 4 films will have and beyond?
I did get a pass on this, right?
You did.
All
you
right.
did.
Have a good one, everybody.
Connective tissues? That's a very good question, but how can we possibly know or speculate until we see how Endgame plays out? You know, there's so much. Is the Beyonder going to get involved? Are the Fantastic Four going to get involved? Is the X-Men in this situation? Where are the Watchers? Like, there's so much with Marvel in terms of the storylines you can play through on this. That is Galactus going to be the next thing? And if Galactus is involved, is Silver Surfer far behind? There's a lot of things that can go forward. But I think they're not going to blow out this whole... I think they're going to start back small again and then build up again. That's what you do. If you want to start this big, you have to keep matching what you just did the film before. I think you got to bring it back down and then build back up again, as most things work.
Well, I do have my money on Secret Invasion, but because Edwin said I can't answer with that, the thing that I'll go with for maybe a conclusion of an Endgame is a tease of maybe the existence of mutants.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, you wrap it up there. You kind of set the stage for the introduction of the X-Men.
Yep.
And then given the status of, not really the status, but given the state of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, rather than lean on the Guardians for the cosmic MCU and, you know, being part of the core team moving forward, bring in the X-Men and let them go about it that way.
Or even the Fantastic Four, Perry, who are, if you look at the origin, that's where they became Fantastic Four, was in space. So
I don't know.
That's possible.
You make Anthony Mackie Captain America and you call it a day.
You don't like Sebastian Stan? No?
All right, Jeff,
I do like Sebastian
you were supposed to
Stan.
sit that one out, but it's okay.
Whatever.
That's it. That's all the time we have for you today. I must thank these two wonderful guys here. Jeff Rocha, thank you for being here. Adam in the booth, as always, we can't do this without you, and you are awesome. And the same goes to you out there as well. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the show. I hope you have enjoyed it. Do not forget to like and share. Tell everybody you know about Movie Talk on the Collider Video YouTube channel and also in podcast form, too, so you could take us on the go. Let's cut to the wide to say goodbye. We will see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. PT, for a brand new episode of Movie Talk.
Don't be too hard on me on YouTube.